Hello, everyone, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Better the Pond Pondcast, where we talk to amazing people doing incredible things that lead the charge of generosity. My name is Warren Berry, and I'm your host and the founder of Instinctive Solutions, where we believe that everyone is an odd duck, but that's what makes them awesome. Today, our guest is Trevor Muir. There was a very dark moment on a bathroom floor that was one of the worst moments of Trevor's life, but instead became the best. Three words that he lives by are authenticity, bravery, and vulnerability. Thinking that it never fit in anywhere, a friend of his reminded him they no longer had to suffer with terminal uniqueness. He realized at that point he was not alone. From his life experiences and his newfound emotional drive, Trevor gets to better the pond through his We Care culture at Surepoint and his Someday to Today campaign. This guy is worth paying attention to. Please welcome Trevor Muir. Well, Trevor Muir, I am absolutely beside myself for the opportunity to talk to you and have you as a guest on my Better the Pond podcast. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. I was touched that you reached out to me, honestly, and certainly owe Tamela a dinner here now for sure.
Yeah, so there she just got her shout out.
Yeah.
No, it was great. You know, we had met just recently, and it was through a connection, and we had a conversation for I don't know about an hour. And after that conversation, I'm like, there is no way that I cannot have you on my podcast as a guest to hear your story.
Well, thank you.
So before I jump in all the questions here, Trevor, why don't you tell my listeners sort of a bit about what you do and a little bit about the company, just kind of just a real sort of overview so we can kind of paint a picture there.
Yeah, you bet. So we, we're an energy services company. So we do mostly trades, instrumentation, electrical, compression services for energy companies, oil and gas and renewables and different things. And I'm really proud of that. We got some really strong technicians, but I think when I said to you before, what I really like to talk about is who we are. And what our purpose is. And so sure, we just happen to do what we do and we do it very well. But the reason why we do it, we have a core purpose that kind of is the driving force behind what we do at Surepoint. And we rebuilt Surepoint back in 2013. I was one of the founders in 2003. And we started with 10 people, a bunch of farm kids, and we thought one day we'd maybe have 40 or 50 people. And we ended up by 2008 having 250-ish, and by 2012 we had 400. And we sold the company in 2008, and then things kind of digressed. And when in 2013 I became the CEO, and we really started to rebuild Surepoint on a culture of caring. We have a foundational core value, we care. And our core purpose is to care about people, empower them, and improve lives. And it's something that aligns us, and we're very passionate about it. So,
yeah, absolutely, and it really shows forth. I mean, looking at your website and whatnot, you're going to see it's just emblazoned. It's just quite interesting. Is you care about people. You just happen to be in the oil and gas industry to do it.
Yeah, that's right. I said when in this industry, and I think human beings just naturally care about human beings. I don't think that this industry is any different. It's just, it's kind of been instilled in us that you work hard and you don't talk about your feelings. You don't need feelings. You just got to work hard, and emotions kind of get in the way of some of that stuff sometimes. And so when we started to rebuild Surepoint, I recognized that the thing that we had done well when we started, even if we didn't totally recognize it, was we had this amazing culture where we just cared about each other. We were growing, we didn't have systems or processes. We're a bunch of farm kids. We didn't really know much about business, but we could go fix stuff. And I said, if we got this right, and really kind of figured out this culture piece and this caring, and really what drove it, ironically, was the fact that we were going down the wrong path, and things were getting really bad financially, and we had a whole bunch of really good people who'd been with us from the beginning who were starting to leave us, and they would say things like, nobody cares anymore. And so when I became the CEO, I went quickly around to all the people and said, actually, we do care. I know you don't feel like it, and we haven't exemplified it well, and I'm really sorry we messed this up, and I'm sorry I was a part of messing it up. but we do care. And I was like, we're just going to say this, like, and then we're going to like, we're going to live and die by this. And one thing about saying you care often enough, people start challenging you on it. And that's when I knew we were starting to make, it was starting to make a difference, because people would call me out. You say you care, and say, yeah. And then we could have a conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
About it. And I said to our team early on, if we go hard on this and this becomes the thing, like if we don't care, we're done, because you can't fake sincerity. And I have tried that many times with my wife. And I say, anybody who could teach me how to convince her I'm sorry when I'm not, I would hire you full time. So because I have not figured that out yet.
give it time. There's two words. Yes, dear.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. Yeah.
So that's a perfect prelude into the questions, because really, Trevor, what when we talk today, I really want to get to know you. I want to get to know your backstory, and then what you're doing to better the pond. And so this is a perfect segue into the next question. So, I want to go back, and I want to find out, Trevor, what got you from being a gosling. And I mean, this is your humble beginnings, like when you were hatched. What you got from being a gosling to leaving the nest, right? When you started to actually get out into life on your own,
yeah,
to where you are today. So, Trevor Muir, what is your backstory?
So I shared, I grew up on a farm, and learned a lot about life on that. I recognize now, I didn't obviously growing up, or even in my earlier adulthood, recognize the values that I gained from growing up that way.
Now, where was the farm? Where did this all start from?
All started in a small community called Elmworth, Alberta, outside of about an hour west of Grand Prairie. And so my parents, my dad had an commercial electrical business down around Calgary. We lived in it lived on an acreage close to Crossfield and close to the city. And our family was all there, my grandparents and my cousins. And my dad had a dream to go farming, and farmland was cheap up there. And he had an uncle. And one day we're in a truck driving 8 hours north and then west, and 75 kilometers of gravel, and then going into a house for the summer that had no power, no water. It was really cool when you're in grade 3. For me, not so much for my mom, I don't think at the time, and then went into a trailer, and my dad went farming, and they were building a gas plant up in Elmworth, Canadian Hunter was, and my dad was electrician on that. And that was sort of, what got me obviously into the trades as well. But so growing up on the farm, learned a lot about community. My dad was an electrician, and somebody's water pump was broken, or their heater crashed in the middle of the night. We got the phone call, and we just went and learned that if somebody needed something, you just rally around that. Learned a lot about working hard. There's responsibility, to get up in the morning and feed the cows, and there's things that needed to be done. I also learned about, how hard my parents worked to make sure that in spite of all the stuff going on, I got to be involved in sports and do a lot of things. What I didn't learn, actually, and I'll share this, what I didn't learn was about how to process emotions. You work on the farm, you get kicked by the cow, you just get up, kick the cow back, and continue milking. Like it was just the way it was. And that ended up causing me some grief, as life went on, just not having that skill set. But it ended up creating the worst day of my life, which eventually became the best day of my life. But that was when I was around 40.
And that's where, well, we will get to the someday to today that you're doing. I wanted any siblings, Trevor?
Yeah, so I have an older sister that's a year older, and then I have a sister that is 12 years younger, actually, and it was not planned at all. It was kind of
you don't tell her that, do you?
No, we do. The universe was playing a joke on my parents. But what's really funny is, so my younger sister had a boy and a girl about a year apart, and then they adopted a little boy that was the same age as their youngest when he was 3 from Haiti. And when they turned 12, my sister had a baby as well. That was not planned. So the joke continues, but really, really, really cool. Yeah, I'm grateful. I'm really, really close to my sisters and my family, like very close. So it's really, really cool.
Cool. So growing up, so you, I mean, obviously grew up on the farm, and so, and what about going to school and your like your elementary school and high school? Was that still around in the same area?
Yeah, so at Elmworth, actually, kindergarten to grade 9 was the school, and I was in school with the same group from grade 3 to grade 9, and I think there were 9 of us in the class the whole time, and then we ended up going to Beaver Lodge High School, which had to take the bus in, and that's where I went to high school, and I knew a lot of folks from there because I played hockey in Beaver Lodge, and so knew all the communities kind of came there to that high school. And growing up in Elmworth and being in a school that small, I also look back on that now, and it influenced my life in so many positive ways. At the time I thought, kind of sucks a bit. You're in school with this small thing and you're not in the city. But looking back on it now, the relationships you built, the kind of mentoring that we got from our teachers and how much they actually cared, it was defining. It definitely defined the trajectory of my life.
Um, and obviously, I mean, with being on the farm, and then I won't say it'd be secluded, but I mean, but it said you had a family there. So also, I think was that same messaging too about like we really care for one another, even though you're a family, but you everyone had to chip in, everyone had to contribute, you had to work hard in order for you to actually flourish.
Yeah, I don't think we ever talked about it as caring. I used to think it was more slave labor, or child labor. But it was, and really, in our family, but as much in the community, as I said, like there was just this. Looking back on it now, they expanded the curling rink, and I remember as a kid being there pulling wire and putting lights in and hammering nails, and the whole community just came to do it. If somebody's house burnt down, or there was some tragedy in a family, the way the community just showed up, like it was amazing. And so I do believe, that on the farm, we had to work hard. It was just a given, and everybody had to. And my dad would work away from the farm sometimes, and so I'd be up, and my mom and I and my sister would be out doing chores, and so you did learn that. In spite of the fact that you didn't want to get up and it was 40 below and you had to go, you had to. And it's certainly a good way to grow up looking back on it.
Mm-hmm. And so what about now after being in Beaver Lodge and you were in high school, you made your way through there. And
Yeah.
at what point did you decide to leave the nest?
So I didn't early. I had a plan that I would jokingly tell people that I was going to live at home long enough my parents would move out. And my dad's more stubborn than me. So I actually lived at home until I was 20 years old or 21, somewhere in there before I moved out to Grand Prairie, moved into the city, bought a half a duplex and moved away and kind of started my life then.
And what was the driver behind that? What made you decided? I mean, obviously your dad was more stubborn, so he won. But but obviously there had to be I'm assuming there was a defining moment where you had to make a choice and say, hey, I'm gonna leave the nest.
Yeah, so I mean, it was something I'd contemplated obviously for a while, and I was working in Grand Prairie. Started in the trade at that time, and so it was an hour drive each way, but it was really a woman. It was a girl, and
Truth is now coming out
yeah,
now. Okay.
yeah, and so got engaged early and got married young, and I bought the place and then got married not too long after, and ended up being in there. And my wife at the time was going to college in Grand Prairie as well. So yeah, I had to leave mom and dad to go and be a husband.
And then good. So it's all about a girl. I get it.
Always about a girl.
Always about a girl. See, the story had to come out. And so what trade did you manage to go into? What was the initial draw?
So actually, I started off in the electrical trade. I had contemplated going back to school, into college or university right out of high school and become a teacher was sort of my plan, to be honest with you. But when I was getting closer to graduating, I realized I didn't really want to go back to school right away. And so my dad had really sort of pushed me down a path. If you're not going to go to school and you're going to go to work, and get into a trade and at least start building on something. And if you change your mind and want to go, back to college or university, it's not wasted time either way. And he was an electrician, so I had a lot of contacts, and so I got a job being an electrician, and I was working. I remember like long hours and pulling cable, and I liked the physical work, but I didn't like the hours and the conditions, and it paid, I think, about $7 an hour, just under $7 an hour, which is pretty good back then, and but not fantastic. And so I remember thinking, oh, I think I'm going to go back to school. So I stopped at the high school, and had re-enrolled for the upcoming semester. And I was going to do 6 months of upgrading just on a couple classes to get my marks up. I was going to go back to work at the tire shop I worked at in Beaver Lodge in high school. And then I was going to go back to college and become a teacher. And it was a family friend was doing, he had a little instrumentation company. And that day I came home and he was at our house having coffee with my dad. And he said, oh, I was actually came to see you. I was wondering if you wanted to come to work with me and do instrumentation. And I said, but knew a little bit about it, not much. And I was like, yeah, I kind of got a different plan and I went to school. And he said, yeah, he said, no, I don't blame you. I think it's good, go get an education. And he said, I couldn't pay you much anyway. He said, I'd have to start you at about $13 an hour. And I was like, huh? I'm like, I'm all in. Like,
you just doubled your salary almost.
That's right. So it wasn't much of a strategic life plan. It was more of that, and then really got into it and really enjoyed it, honestly. And he was an incredible mentor and friend. So.
And so from there, so there you are. You're going in. He's now in the instrumentation industry. So you're getting into oil and gas. And what got you then from that point to where you are today?
I moved around a little bit. I ended up divorced and then met another lady that's my wife today. Been through a lot with her, and we ended up moving around. Went to Whitecourt and a few different places, and I really started to learn a lot about me and a lot about the trade. And got opportunities to move into sort of some leadership roles. I started a branch for a company out of Fox Creek when I was young, and moved there. And my wife was willing to come, and we kind of got going in the town there, and eventually moved back to Grand Prairie. And I had always wanted to have my own business. Like that was something, even as when I was young, I didn't know what it was, but I always felt like I'd like to own a business. And so I had an opportunity to start my own company. So I did, called Matrix Measurement, and it was me and I had a fellow working for me, and we were doing a lot of work for one client. And then this group of people that I knew well, and one individual, Cordell Weber, was a friend of my dad's and had been in the trade. He had Surepoint services, and he approached me and asked if I wanted to come and be a part of this group that they were going to put together, and had this plan, 10 owners, 10% each. And everyone told us not to do it. Like everyone, it's friendships, and it's the ownership model doesn't make sense. But we did it. And it, it changed my life in lots of ways. And it was a pretty cool thing. Surepoint's become a part of who I am, for sure.
And so, obviously that threw you down. It threw you down like a whole another trajectory of your life, obviously, right? From basically being in the trades, having your own business with two people, and all of a sudden now you're in a partnership in a growing industry. Life sure obviously took a turn.
It did. And so for me, I stayed in the tools 20 some years, even as I progressed in Surepoint and became a general manager of the company. I'd still spend a lot of time working on the tools and in the field, pulling cable and commissioning. And it was where my heart was. And I felt like that's where I added the most value. I was building teams, but I was doing it kind of different. And I'm we were talking before, I don't like being in the office very much. I spend a lot of time on the road. I'm pretty shitty actually when I got to sit behind a desk, but I like being with the people. I like being out and seeing what's going on and meeting our folks. And so I continued on that trajectory. As moved to Edmonton actually in 2007, moved to the area, with the plan of only being here for 1 year. My
Mm.
father-in-law was diagnosed with illness that was going to, give him not much length of life left. And my wife was down here a lot, and I was in Grand Prairie, and I felt like I was always in Whitecourt. You bring that up, puts a smile on my face because I spent some time there. But I was always stopping in Whitecourt to fuel up, and so I felt like I wasn't being a good partner to my partners, and I wasn't being a good partner to my wife. And one weekend, I said to her, like, we just have to be here with your mom and stepdad. Like, we just got to come down, and I'll go talk to the partners and let them know. Daryl was my father-in-law, and they had given him 8 months to a year left to live. And I said, let's just come and spend the time here. And I went to the partnership group and said, I don't want to sell out. I'll find a way to make a living. But I'll come back once Daryl's passed. And so we moved down here. And so I'm working, but I'm never home. I'm in these towns all over the place, but I'm not in Nisku or Edmonton at all. So I was starting to feel like I might as well have stayed in Grand Prairie. And we had our ownership group had a little shop down here, and so we decided, well, let's try and grow something. A lot of activity in Nisku. It's the rig capital of Canada, and there was lots of rig activity going on. And I was like, I have to find a way to make a living in rigs if I want to be home at night. And so I hired a guy, and wasn't really getting much traction. And I actually ended up meeting a guy in a bathroom at a Joey's bar that was from Australia. I said hi to him. I'd had a few too many beers, and I said, hi, man. He's like, hey, mate, how's it going? I said, pretty good. I said, mate, where are you from? He said, I'm from Australia. And it was December at the time. So I said, man, like, go home and come back in July. You're going to freeze to death. And ended up talking to him and asked him what he was doing. And he said he was with a small drilling contractor out of Australia and looking for drilling rigs. They were going to build some rigs and looking at rig technology. And I was like, oh, we'll build you a state-of-the-art AC drive drilling rig. And ended up at the table with him and his colleagues there, and got really late into the night, and they're talking about all their rig experience. And they asked me at about 1 a.m, how many years have you been on the rigs? I'm like, oh, I've never been on a rig in my life. And they started to laugh. But you're going to help us build a state-of-the-art drilling rig system. I'm like, well, not me, but I know some people who can. Yeah, we can do this. Met them the next day and flew over 5 weeks, 6 weeks later to Australia, and ended up doing $20 million worth of work with them the next year. And all of a sudden now we've got a big shop and we have to hire people. So it's like, well, I'll stay here in Edmonton for another year and kind of build up the team and then go back home, and just, this is home now. So
it's funny. I was talking to a gentleman yesterday, and he had a conversation with a guy that just, like, everything turned. Like, it was that one conversation and everything changed. And so now it's funny when you say that. It's like one conversation in the bathroom after one too many beers, and your trajectory of your life changes. And it's such a simple thing.
Yeah.
With such a great impact.
Yeah. And there's so many that, like that. I mean, that one's huge, right? And it's a pretty cool story. And Troy was the guy I met in the bathroom. He was taking over the business from his father, then grew really big and ended up exiting and doing well financially. And he was about a year younger than me, and just, the stars aligned. It was fate. We both believe that, and he's done really well. And but I found so many times in my life random conversations, and just having an urge to say hi to somebody in a lineup, and it can be life-changing and impactful in ways that you can't even understand. And lots of times it's just a seemingly meaningless encounter. But I don't really believe that either. I believe, two human beings that meet anywhere, that the chances of meeting another human being on the planet, any place, is, being in the exact same place at the exact same time, like, the odds are low anyways. And so I like to talk a lot. So
well, I want to unpack. You come up with a really great point there, Trevor. Before we move on with this, but I think you said that, that it's having that urge to talk to somebody, or having that urge to say hello. Yeah. And what, that's an interesting point. So what would you say that urge is? What would you advise people to say if they have that urge, or what does that urge feel like, or how would you explain that?
So I've thought of this lots. I've traveled all over the world. I've been so fortunate with Surepoint to go to places and meet a lot of people. And I often think about this, like, why sometimes I'm standing in line at an airport, or I'm at a baggage carousel, or at a restaurant by myself, And sometimes I have no desire to say hi to the person beside me at all. Other times I have this overwhelming feeling, or I'll see somebody. Often I've saw someone in the airport and kind of caught their eye and have a feeling like I'm going to run into this person again, and often do, or have a feeling like I just have to go and say hello. And I don't know why, but it is a feeling. And I used to have that feeling, but fear would stop me from moving forward on it, and just the simple act of smiling at somebody and saying hello can often start a conversation that can be like profound and really life changing. And maybe you don't keep in touch with the person, and maybe you do. But I've had some of the most interesting conversations on airplanes and in standing with young people and people a lot older than me. And I find that fear holds people back. Lots of people, you have that feeling and you just for some reason want to say hi. But then the insecurity kicks in, like, oh, why would this person want to talk to me? And really, I'm probably inconveniencing them. And I found that that's not really the case. Sometimes I say hi and the person says hi and that's it.
Right.
But often it's turned into these conversations, sometimes for minutes, sometimes for hours. And a lot of people I've stayed in touch with for years that I've met randomly, social media now and access to, to human beings. Like there's some that I reach out to a few times a year that I've met just random in a lineup.
And what's funny is that you may have that feeling, but let's say fear holds you back, but you never know, they may also have that same feeling, right? And you have no idea. Right?
So often I'll ask now, like I'm really interested in human beings and emotions. And I've learned this at an emotional level. I really believe this to my core. At an emotional level, we're all the same. Like, and so often I've said to somebody, hey, I just had this like feeling of I needed to talk to you. And they'll be like, I actually felt the same way. And I say, well, why didn't you say hi? And it's like, well, I was kind of insecure, didn't want to bother you. And I'm like, no, I get it. I pushed through that because I have those same things, right? And so I've been able to travel around, as I said, and I went to Africa actually and climbed Kilimanjaro with a really good friend of mine and our VP of sales and marketing. And when I was over there and I saw how poor the people were, and we spent some time in the towns, and I saw kids, with this spark in their eye, and they're having fun and they're playing together, and they're literally playing with sticks and rocks. Like they're poor and they don't even realize how poor they are. Like they're referenced to somebody who's not poor. They have a whole roof on their house or a solar panel and a single light. And I remember coming back and had all this emotional upheaval and really feeling like how privileged I am and I am. But instead of being grateful, I was kind of becoming a bit cynical about it. And I have nephews and nieces, and I think of my own son. He's older now, but and how spoiled he was, and these nephews and nieces, and they're younger. And my sister takes their iPad away, and they chuck a wreck, right? Like it's like cut their foot off, and I was like, I just don't understand it. How could they feel that way? Like, what about those people those kids in Africa that don't have that? And it hit me one day. Oh my God, when the mom wants to punish the kid for not doing what they were asked to do for the chores, she takes the stick and rock away. That kid has the exact same emotional response as my nephews and nieces who get the iPad. It's all relative. They have no context. And thankfully my nephews and nieces will never, hopefully ever have to live in that condition, but their emotional response is exactly the same. And I spend a lot of time now asking people how they feel. And I'll just ask people when I get to know them, like, how are you feeling? And, and I'll talk about this and I'll say, at an emotional level, we're all the same. And some people will be like, I'm like, well, I have never met a human being that I've asked, have you ever felt sad? Have you ever been excited? Have you ever been in love? Have you ever had your heart broken? Do you have kids? And if the answer is yes, have you ever worried about them? Have you ever been angry at them? Have you ever been scared? And have you ever worried about your parents? And I haven't had a single human being in any career, in any stage of life that's answered any different. I've never had one people say, no, I've never felt sadness. I've never felt love. I've never had my heart broke. I've never felt joy. I've never worried about my kids. I've never been super pissed off at them. I'm like, so at that level, I believe we're all the same.
This is so interesting to listen to, because you talk about one of the values of Surepoint, right, is we care. And what I'm hearing you say when you're actually when you're talking to someone, and asking them questions, you truly care. Like, you care about the answer you're going to get. It really matters.
Yeah.
And yet when you were a kid, right, what you learned was to shut your emotions down.
Yeah, and I did, and I say this often and joking, sort of tongue in cheek. My dad's a tough guy, and he worked hard, and his son get kicked by a horse, and he got up and didn't go to the hospital. He had cows to move. Is get back on the horse. If you need to go to the hospital, you do it after. And so I jokingly say to people, my dad was the kind of father who was like, if I was crying about something, he'd say, "Stop your crying, or I'll give you something to cry about," which meant he was going to come across and boot me in the butt. And that was an appropriate reason to cry, I suppose. But I even then I would be like, doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Now I'll cry. I'll continue to cry because my bum hurts. But I already had a reason. Now I have two reasons to cry. One was my feelings were hurt, or my sister hurt my feelings, or I was afraid of the chicken that was chasing me. There was a reason, right? And ironically, I used a lot of the same parenting techniques with my kid. Stop your crying, or I'll come give you something to cry about. And it was really, I was 40 years old, and kind of the gig was up for me. I had accomplished a lot in my life. I was seemingly successful. On the outside, it looked like I had most of my stuff together, and we had sold Surepoint and a beautiful wife, and my kid was 18 at that time, and my parents love me, and I'm close with them. I got good sisters, I had friends, and I'm a partner in this successful company. But the truth inside, I was dying. Like, I was so afraid of everything. I was insecure my whole life. And I actually used that as motivation. I realized after, it was the thing that kind of forced me to move forward. But if anybody asked me how I was doing, and that's why I ask people often, how do you feel? Because the standard answer, and it's still to this day, it doesn't matter what's going on in my life. If somebody says, "How are things?" I will answer, "Things are good, great, or awesome." And good probably means terrible. And awesome probably means great. Or how are you doing? I'm doing fantastic. Like, that was my canned response, and it just was automatic. And yet here I was in my 30s, and my life was unraveling at a time where I was financially secure, and a beautiful acreage, beautiful wife, and all this stuff. And I was starting to lose it all. And I was so afraid. I tell people today that I was afraid of success and afraid of failure. I ended up separated from my wife, and I woke up on a bathroom floor all alone. And what was really, funny, not funny, was people would say, "How are you doing?" "Oh, pretty good. My wife, she's not very happy with me. I'm living on my own, but it's probably for the best. And, probably move on from Surepoint. You've been here a long time. Like, it's time for me to do something else." And the truth was, I was so afraid, but I would never tell anyone. When I got home alone and went into the dark, I was like a 5-year-old child. Like, I would lay in the fetal position and be just scared and sad, but I would never tell anyone. And then one morning I woke up on a bathroom floor and with an almost overwhelming desire to end my life. And that was the worst day of my life. And it became the best day of my life. That was over 11 years ago. And I can tell you, I lived in that place for about 10 or 12 weeks. I can tell you the color of the paint on the wall of that bathroom, how it smelled, the tile color and the pattern. I remember every moment about that bathroom and every detail that could imagine. But that was the day that forced me to change my life. And I made a different choice, thankfully, and ended up reaching out for some help. And ironically, I went through a list. I wasn't going to cry. I had my heart broke by my first love. And I remember bawling on a bathroom floor. There kind of was a pattern there when I was 20, in my early 20s. And I didn't think I'd ever stop crying. And I remember getting up, wiping my face. And I was telling everybody at that time, "Oh, it's good. Things are fine." But I thought I'd never stop crying. And I got up off the bathroom floor, washed my face, and looked in the mirror and said, "I'm never, ever going to feel this way again." And stuffed so much stuff. And I was almost 40 when I woke up on the other bathroom floor and realized something needed to change. And I reached out to a life coach, and because I wasn't going to go to a psychiatrist. Like, there was I remember starting to cry, get off of the bathroom floor. I looked in the mirror, And I'm like, I am not crying. Like, I refuse to cry. So I washed my face again and I'm like, I'm not going to cry. And I remember just for the first time, and I don't think I'd ever looked myself in the eye. I don't think I had ever looked in the mirror and looked at my eyes. And I caught myself and I thought, well, wait a minute, and I had this thought, what would I tell a friend if they said I have all this stuff, acreage and money and beautiful wife and even a sports car and all the things, but this is how I feel. I would be like, oh man, I get it. Holy crow, I get it. It's okay you have that and you feel this way, go get some help. And I thought, help. So I was scrolling through Google and psychiatrist comes up. I'm like, what would my friends think if they heard I was going to see a psychiatrist? That was where I was at and where my ego was at the time. But life coach, I thought I could sell that. And the universe was working in my favor because there was an opening with the lady the next day, which is unheard of in Edmonton. She had a cancellation. So I went and saw her and ironically, I sat with her, got all cleaned up the next day and went in and how are you doing? I am good. I've got a few things going on, but I'm really good. And she said, you're not good and I can't help you. And she scared me. And I was like, she's like, don't leave this office, but I can't help you. You need help? And I'm like, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. She said, you're not fine. She said, you're not fine. I'm very worried about you. Stay here. I'll be right back. And she came back with this great big man and he comes in and his name was Dr. Gans. And that man saved my life for sure.
So. Wow. So you think of all the people that you could have chose out of Google and you weren't going to go to a psychiatrist, but
I didn't fool the universe of laughing at me because the life coach was a psychiatrist. So both of them were. So yeah, and it was exactly what I needed and spent some time with him and he kind of pried me open and he asked me one day in a session, how are you feeling? And I don't think any other than when I was sick, like, cough or cold or, in the hospital getting something checked out. Nobody had ever asked me how I was feeling ever. Like, it was just not something, or if they did, I never really paid attention to it. And here it just is random conversation. He said, how are you feeling? And I said, I just blurted it out. I said, honestly, I am sad. I'm afraid of everything. I'm afraid of success. I'm afraid of failure. I said, I am so scared and I am lonely. I'm lonely when I'm alone. I'm lonelier when I'm with my friends and I'm loneliest when I'm with my family. And I don't know why. And I said it and I was like, oh my God, when you say that thing to your wife that you regret saying and you're just trying to suck it back. I was like, what did I just do? Here's this guy, look up to this professional. And I expected he's going to say, how can you feel that way with all the things you have and how your life is? And instead, and you should be grateful and you got to change your perspective. And all this is going, my mind's going a million miles an hour. And instead he reached out and put his hand on my shoulder and he goes, I get it. Looks me in the eye. He goes, I totally get it. If you'd have told me anything else, I wouldn't have believed you. And then I was able to start to heal and but I didn't even know how to identify with emotions. I knew there was happy, sad, and more sad, like angry. Like that was it.
That was it.
Oh, yeah. And so I like that day on the bathroom floor was the worst day of my life that became the best day of my life. Not only saved my life, it gave me a life. Like all of a sudden I started to learn a lot about my makeup and a lot about my emotions. And I could go back and then I did a lot of work with some other people, some other giants in my life who helped me really unpack some stuff and to learn that at a certain point in my life, everything that happened, good or bad, in my life, I had a part of, and I no longer did I have to be a victim. And I've got this one guy, I love him to death. And I remember pretty early on, I'm going and speaking with these gentlemen and talking about, I'm getting stuff out and I'm feeling pretty good, but still probably more of a victim than anything. I'm always sharing about how I'm feeling and, how the world is kind of dumping on me and I'm liking this. And he said to me one time, he goes, Trevor, could you come and share? And thanks for doing that. And glad you're here. And he said, but I got some good news for you. I said, what's that? He said, you no longer have to suffer from terminal uniqueness. Ouch. It's so true. And I just felt like nobody would ever understand and nobody would ever identify, how I felt. And at the end of the day, that's where I really started to learn that everybody did. We live in different houses, we drive different vehicles, we have different spouses, we have different jobs, but I wasn't, when I was talking about how I was feeling, I wasn't sharing any emotion that they hadn't all felt at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So.
No, terminal uniqueness. That I'm just gonna make a note of that.
Yeah. So I use that often, even to remind myself sometimes when I'm feeling sorry. I said the other day I was out for a hike and Devon in the river, and I just needed to go clear my mind. And things were tough. We've had some amazing growth at Surepoint, which is exciting, but it causes some complications. And we were in a bit of a speed wobble. And I was like, that week I was in my head a lot. And I was like, we're struggling with some things. So what are people thinking? And I realized I'm walking, I'm thinking about how it's about me, and that's not who I try to be anymore. And I say, I'm going to write a book one day called "It's Really All About Me."
Well, you led me into the perfect, again, like you lead the perfect segue, I tell you. So here's the funny thing, and it's actually going to really tie into your terminal uniqueness. But Trevor, I believe that we're all odd ducks. I believe that we're all a little weird. We're all kind of misfits, right? But was there a time where you felt that you really didn't fit in, and where what did you do to stand out? That can be positive or negative. Like what's really made you? And I know you've kind of tied into this already, but I want to sort of just dive a little bit deeper into what makes you the odd duck.
So I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere most of my life, and I tried so hard to be honest with you. Like I wanted to, and so I got, I was competitive in sports, and in the towns I was in, I played at the level that they were there, and I loved to be in part of teams. But I realized when I got older and started to, do the inner work that I did, become aware that I had never felt like I fit in anywhere, which was part of the problem. And I don't, I don't actually know why. I don't need to know why anymore. I don't need to really go back and say there was this moment at 4 years old. I don't know. But now I tell people that if I was around firemen, I'd pretend I was a fireman. And if I was, later with some cowboys, I'd throw on a cowboy hat and I'd rope, and rockers, I had a leather coat, and I wore all these masks. And until I woke up that day on the bathroom floor, I didn't know who I was anymore. And I was just trying to belong somewhere. And it actually, I touched on it earlier, it actually became a motivator for me. And I believe the next thing I got, the next level of success, the next accomplishment, the next goal, that I would just feel better. And I would for a little while, I'd get the next thing, and I'd feel better, and I think, what is life really about? Because I'm doing the stuff, like I'm working hard, I'm out there, I got a wife, I got a kid, I'm being mostly responsible. What is this about? And yet I'd be with my friends, and I have some that to this day I'm still so close with, and they were there for me through this stuff and part of my journey, but I didn't feel like I even fit in with them. And I certainly at times didn't feel like I fit in with my family, and I didn't know why. I just did not understand why. And I became an expert at stuffing my emotions. And I thought that would, and it actually was a skill in business. If I got put into a situation, where things get heated, I could immediately, swallow, and I could stay calm, and I could kind of bring the conversation back down, the tone down, and we could talk through things. And I thought that was I thought that was an excellent skill. Turns out it is, but not when I'm constantly stuffing how I'm feeling. And I eventually got to a place where I was numb, and I mean numb. And so for me, I don't know if I shared with you when we chatted before, but I love Christmas. Like it's the biggest thing to me. I don't sleep Christmas Eve. My family has a rule: I'm not allowed to wake them up till 5:30 in the morning on Christmas Day anymore. Like we don't have young kids. But I'm like, I send a text last Christmas. I sent 550 individual texts or maybe more to wish people Merry Christmas. Like it's become a thing. At midnight, I have to start to be done by 5 a.m, and people race me now at 12:01 to try and beat me. And it's become this really cool thing. But I was going through the motions of it on Christmas Day and being like, but I wasn't excited anymore. I didn't feel anything, and that scared me. So.
Mm-hmm. So now, going back to saying that, there was a time when you didn't fit in, And what's changed now that you find that you do fit in, or do you still not fit in? What is that like in your world?
Yeah, no, I do. I spend less time worrying about fitting in, to be honest with you. I spend way more time, just trying to be me. Like I was so afraid to be me. First, I didn't really know who I was. And second, there was a time I would have never talked about caring as much as I did. We talk about our business and our folks being a team, a family. I remember the first time I said, we're a team, and got the weird looks. And when talk about family, people challenge me on that today. And I love the conversation now, and they say, wow, business isn't really a family. I'm like, family's a feeling. Yes, it's not my cousin and it's not my, my aunt, but it's somebody's cousin and somebody's aunt. And now I feel like I fit in, but I'm not trying to fit in anymore.
Right.
That's the biggest thing. It's no longer important for me to fit in. It's very, very important for me to be me. And so that's why I can go in, in Surepoint or into relationships with people without that fear of trying to, okay, who do I have to be this time? Like what version of me am I supposed to be in this situation? And I'm not perfect at it. I still have insecurities, and I still meet new people, and I still, have high levels of respect for some folks that I know, that I get introduced to them, and I'm like, oh, I gotta, my wife always recommends that I don't be nearly as immature when I'm out of the house as I am when I'm in the house. Other than that, I'm pretty much who I am everywhere. So,
well, I hope you never grow up, Trevor.
yeah,
That's what the fun is.
that's right.
So
Absolutely.
I know that you've led into this earlier, and I'm not sure if it's going to have the same answer or somebody else, but tell me about a time when someone did something for you that left a real impact on your life.
So I was reading that before we got into this, and I was thinking about it. And there's definitely some giants in my life. I had a teacher in third grade that really made an influence, Mrs. Sather, on me, and she just made me feel special. And then as I got older, there's a fellow named Blaine who is a mentor in my life today and such a good friend, and he helped lead me through some really, really challenging times in my life, and was there for me. I just have so many people. Brian, the guy who got me into the trade, and then his brother-in-law Harvey, who actually taught me about instrumentation and taught me what it was like to be a tradesperson and to show up in a certain way. And then at Surepoint, Cordell really led us in a way that was heart-centered. I don't think he recognized it at the time. It was more about just being a person that just was a person, and you just show up, do the stuff. But one of the things when I was thinking about it, and I was talking about this earlier with a good friend of mine, Marty, who I went to Kelly with, and really was sort of the inspiration for Someday to Today poem and the initiative. I was saying, so growing up on the farm with my dad, it was hard to work beside him every day, and growing up with a tough, hard guy. And we didn't always have the greatest relationship, and we have a really, really good relationship today. And I was saying, I've started to look back on my life, and he taught me some things, whether he meant to or not just about working hard and being responsible. And I remember him saying to me, one time when I was, I don't know, probably a teenager just before, and mad at him and told him I didn't like him. And he said, that's okay. It's not my job to have you like me. It's my job to make sure you grow up to be respectful. And if you happen to like me, that's a bonus when you get older. But you have to be a good citizen and a good member of the community. And I didn't really appreciate it at the time. And I just started to remember some of this stuff and thought back, like some of the lessons that I learned from him, that, he wasn't a perfect man. And he used to say to me, Trev, you're no different than any other human being and any other man. You get up in the morning, we all put our pants on one leg at a time. And I remember thinking, oh my God, like that's ridiculous. But, to think back on some of this stuff, to learn that it's okay, you can make mistakes, and that's all right. And you can, he always would say, like, you can fail. The only time you fail is when you stop trying. And sometimes the lessons were hard from him. There wasn't a lot of cuddles and hugs and empathy. But I learned so much, and we have an amazing relationship today. And I have a whole new level of respect and just gratitude for how I grew up. in spite of the fact I didn't learn about my emotions. And I think today that, I don't think he knew how to be honest with you, truly process them all. I always thought he was this tough guy until he became a grandpa, and the grandkid would take a crayon and do some squiggly marks and put grandpa on it and he'd be crying. I'm like, yeah.
Amazing how that changes.
Yeah. And so there's been way too many to really mention any defining moment. Dr. Gons obviously was a big one in my life. Brian Marty, he has been a giant in my life. I've got a couple of friends that have just been there for me at times to really be there when I was making some poor decisions and doing some dumb stuff, and that helped me. So I'm just a real fortunate person for the people who've been put on my path. Like, very fortunate.
Well, I believe that like attracts like. So
well, thank you.
Says a lot about you. So now what are you doing? Let's dive into what you're doing right now to better the pond, Trevor. And I mean, I really want to get into, like, your someday to today, your week here, those kind of things you're doing. So tell us about, what you're doing to better the pond. And then also, why are you doing it? Why does it matter? What is the driving force behind this?
Yeah. So to start with, when we started the We Care, as I shared earlier, it was really to reunify us and to bring us together and to create an environment where we cared about each other. And to me, that was the most important thing. If we cared about each other, the rest of the stuff would work out and in business. But when we said we care, and then we put our core purpose, we didn't say we care about making Trevor more money, or we care about Trevor, we care about shareholders, or we care about the leaders. We said we care. And then we started to take it to say, well, we care doesn't even just mean about Surepoint and about the people in Surepoint. It means about our clients and our vendors and our community. So we call them partners. And it means that we care about the person who works at the client and the person who lives in the community. And so this thing's got a life of its own. And our teams took, through the pandemic, we did some pretty unique stuff, and we ended up, keeping almost all our folks together and paying them. And we all sacrificed for one another. And We Care really took on a whole new meaning. And then our people started to really get involved and actively involved in the community. And early on in the pandemic, we made a decision that we weren't going to squander this opportunity to build a better culture and come together even tighter. And so we launched We Care Days. The team did at Surepoint, and it was just a week in September. We're doing it again this year. And each branch had a budget, and they picked a different day of the week. And it was the caveat. The caveat was they could do anything they wanted as long as it was spreading random acts of kindness and love. That was it. So you couldn't go to a client and buy them something to try and get work. And so at most of the branches, they were handing out, one of the things that they did lots on those days. One of the things was hand out coffee cards at Tim Horton drive-through, and you find out that people are super skeptical. I got to participate in 2 of them. You got We Care shirts, and we got We Care banners and Surepoint. And people are rolling their windows up, locking their doors. We're like, no, come on, we're giving you free coffee. What do I have to give you for this coffee? No, nothing. But you also started to see, like, human beings smile, people crying. You give a free coffee and they're crying their eyes out. We had so many phone calls to the offices about, oh my God, somebody from your team gave us a free coffee. And we went and did some stuff for some nonprofits and for some families that we heard about in the community that were just suffering. And so it's important to me. One of my values is to help people improve lives. And a lot of that comes from my experience, growing up and becoming that young adult who was afraid of everything and on the bathroom floor that day. And I always wondered, I believe that people help people best by sharing their experiences. Mm-hmm. And again, going back to that terminal uniqueness, I was always afraid to share about what was going on or my experience because I have fear of judgment. Instead, I'm like, if I share, more people identify than not, and it gives people opportunity to just open up. And I found this, and we have truly found this: if you give people permission to go out and spread kindness and love, they will go out and spread kindness and love. If you give people permission to do the right thing, they always will. And I mean, always. It's universal.
Right. No, I agree. And then what about the someday to today? Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so that's, that one's near and dear to my heart. So I wrote a poem called Someday to Today, and it was after a an event that happened with Marty and I in Princess Island Park in 2015 or 2016. We were there. I decided to stay in Calgary. That's where Princess Island Park is. It's downtown Calgary. I was down for meetings and I decided last minute to stay overnight, and we were going to go to the park and throw a Frisbee and go for a run. We got there early on, and just walking, we hadn't even been there 5 minutes, and Marty started to complain of a headache and dizzy. So we sat at a picnic bench. Long story short, I said, hey, why don't we just go for dinner instead of going for a run? And he said, well, let's just go for a walk and then we'll go for dinner. We started up this little hill and I heard him scream, and I turned around and he fell to his knees and he rolled down the hill, and he stopped breathing. And so I chased him down the hill, rolled him over, called 911, and I tell people they're angels. I had taken CPR, but I'd never used it before. And so I gave him CPR for about 3.5 minutes. The first responders got there and brought him back to life. They intubated him, they never found out what was wrong. He's super healthy and he's great life and has a wife and a kid now. But it hit me in that moment, like we don't get an hour's notice when it's over. We don't get a minute's notice. Like Marty did one breath in and then one breath out, and that was it. You get one in and then you naturally exhale. I watched it, and then it's over. And I remember just really contemplating life and going, oh my God, like, and shortly after, weeks later, the guy who got me into the trade, into instrumentation, Brian, I got a call from his son saying, hey, dad's in ICU at the hospital. And he had a condition, but he was doing pretty good. And then just quickly went downhill. He said, we're getting the family together and then we're going to pull the plug. And Brian was 62 years old, I believe, right around 62, financially super comfortable, had decided to stop working finally in January, and a couple months later he passes away. And I go to the funeral, or to his service, and the guy speaking was Harvey. It was his brother-in-law, who was also a giant in my life. And he said at the end, he talked about all the things that him and Brian were going to do someday. They're going to go golf in these different places in North America. They were going to go watch hockey games at these different NHL arenas. And they both had the means to. And he said, we're not going to get to do that. And I hope that, you leave here and you start to change your someday to today. And the next morning I got up, and between Marty and that, and I wrote a poem called Someday to Today. And I hadn't actually told anybody, or very few people knew I even wrote poetry, and I had for a lot of my life. I ended up publishing a book a few years ago, but I had kept it to myself. It was a way for me to sort of get my emotions out on paper. But I shared this with the team and a few people in Surepoint, and they took this and they said, hey, let's do a Someday Today campaign. So we did it internally, and it was pretty easy that year. Write on a sticky note what you're going to do someday. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go fishing with my dad. I'm going to go buy a house. I'm going to go hang out with my friend, or whatever. I'm going to catch up with a buddy I haven't seen. And the thing was, if you did it, you put it on the wall, take a picture. If you did, we did a random draw for each branch for $100. And at the end of the year, we did one for $1,500 random draw, and one person got a $1,500 voucher to go and help make a Someday Today. And we had real good success. It was a lot of fun, and it kind of died off. We had some really, really cool things happen, people reuniting with family. And then during the pandemic, we decided to launch it again. And I actually went and did a video compilation of the poem with family members and people at work, and they say different things. And then we launched it, and it just got a life of its own. And we're starting to get feedback on people who are doing things that they had always talked about doing. And I believe this today. I said, I think one of the greatest things about being a human being is, no matter what's going on in our life today, and it's pretty universal, everybody believes the future is going to be better than today. And I've never talked to a 30-year-old who is really struggling in their life, who's just shitty, who said, it really sucks now, but I think it's going to be worse when I'm 61. Like, I think it's going to be way worse then. This is bad now. And I've never met somebody who was 20 or 40 who said, things are awesome in my life, but they're going to be really bad when I'm 55. Like, we just automatically believe that it's going to be better. And I think that is awesome. I think that's a human trait that's fantastic. But what I don't understand is why, as human beings, we believe we have a future. Mm-hmm. Like, we just inherently believe that, I don't think about the fact I'm not going to be alive at 65. And I think that's great. But why do I think I have time to do this stuff? So there's some things. I have a Someday to Today list that I check. Some of it's checking with my parents. If your grandma and grandpa are still alive, go and have a coffee with them, phone them. It doesn't have to be. Marty and I did our someday to today in 2016, go climb Kilimanjaro. I tell people it doesn't have to be jumping out of an airplane, or it could be, or climbing a mountain. It can be catching up with that friend you haven't saw forever, or sending a text. I send so many texts and emails to people that if somebody's on my mind for more than a couple minutes, I'm like, hey, just thinking of you. Because so often I didn't, and it wasn't because I didn't think about it and didn't love them, but I was like, why it takes, I text like a 14-year-old girl, like I'm really quick at it. It takes me 13 seconds to send a, hey, how you doing? You're on my mind. So and we saw people not even a part of Surepoint now reach out and just share these things that they're doing with their life from this Someday to Today initiative. So yeah, I'm really, really proud of it. And our team just does, as soon as we come up with these crazy things, they just jump in. So there was something I'll share, just happened last week. So Cameron is our CFO, and his mom is probably the coolest woman I've ever met, maybe the coolest human. She's just got this serenity and this peace and contentment. And I've always told Cam, I said, I hope that I get like 1 ounce of the contentment that she has in her life. And she's had her 70th birthday last week, and she's in the last days of her life here. And so the kid said, what can we do for you, Mom? What can we get you? And she always had this thing where she would talk about beauty in the swamp, smile at a stranger, like, we live in this swampy world that, can be messy and smelly, but you can be the beauty in the swamp. And so she had said to them, just do some random act of kindness for me. So Cam shared it, that his sister had hashtag beauty in the swamp and had registered the name for the day on June 27th. And so Cam shared it with us, with Marty, me, Alana, Mindy, Lindsay. We took this thing and we're like, let's blow this thing up. Like, let's beauty in the swamp the hell out of this, and let's make it a yearly thing. And this thing exploded on us. I went and bought $100 worth of coffee at this there's this little coffee drive through. This young lady owns it in town. And I went there and said, hey, could buy $100 worth of coffees for everybody who drives through. She got this little utility trailer. People were going there getting free coffee and buying $20 more and $20 more and $20 more. And people were jumping in on these lengths. Like, I was in a restaurant and I bought dinner for 4 couples randomly, and then they bought, and like this thing went nuts. And I'm like, that is the beauty of human beings. Give them. And so it became overwhelming for his mom. Like, my social media stuff exploded from this thing. And it was a wish of a lady who's just really comfortable in her final days of life, and she's okay with it, and that's what she wanted. And I was like, man, and how our team rallied around it, and then how we just saw the world like just go crazy with this thing. It was so cool.
Yeah, that's incredible. What a great story. And I talk a lot about the ripple effect, right? I mean, she just threw in the pebble, right? And the ripples just went on, and you never know how far they will go. That's the best part, right? They just keep carrying on and on and on and on and on, right?
I thought it was really fitting because I knew I was going to be chatting with you, and you tie things so well back to nature, and you just do this brilliantly. And I thought, how ironic that the week before, this comes up, and she used the same terminology, and she taught her kids, you don't know what the pebble does. You don't know how far the ripple goes. But what you do know is when you smile at somebody, you don't know how you've changed their life at that moment. When you're walking on a path, it takes no effort to look at them and smile, whether you get a reaction or not. You have no idea what happened and how many people smile. And then, you do things like, go and buy some coffees. And then you just see this people, like this lineup. I went back there yesterday and got a coffee to go a few times a week. And I said, how did that go? And they said, it was overwhelming. It actually became this thing that was hard for us to even manage because we were just getting so much money to try and keeping track of how many coffees and how many sandwiches. And I was like, how amazing that this woman, like, that was the impact that she had. And now we're going to continue that every year on her birthday. Like, whatever. And our whole team rallies around that. They're like, yeah, we're going to do this. And so Barb gets to hear about it and got to see all this stuff. And Cal was like, it was just overwhelming, like the amount of stuff that came through social media, and people that don't even know her, don't even know any of us.
Mm-hmm.
but this is what we do well. I'm so proud of Surepoint. I love it. We make a lot of mistakes, and we have not got our culture figured out. We work hard on it. It's something important to us. We hurt each other's feelings. I make some really terrible decisions sometimes, and that's just that reality. But one thing that we do, I think, exceptionally well and world class, and that I am the proudest about, is how much the people care and how much they rally around this stuff and how much they support one another and people in the community.
Yeah, absolutely. And that obviously shows. And I don't want to just say something real quick about that. It's just interesting because the story told about just throwing in the pebble, and it costs nothing to smile at someone. It costs nothing, right? But it's the same thing you said earlier, is some of the changes in your life were out of I just felt the need to talk to this person. It cost you nothing to say hello and talk to this person, and all of a sudden the way the ripples went again. So there's nothing about money in that. It's about human interaction.
And at the end of the day, that's all that it is. Like we're just, we're emotional beings, and I think about life this way. I talk to a lot of people about this, and especially the young folks in my family and in my life. I'm like, life is nothing but a never ending series of emotional experiences. That's all it is. We're just and no two will ever be exactly the same. I will never feel the exact amount of joy or pain. I'll feel worse or more. And even if I'm doing, each Christmas is different. Even though I love Christmas, there's varying degrees of emotion and things that happen on Christmas. And I really believe that is, our purpose in life is just to try and make a difference. And I feel good. I want, I like to caveat that with our team, remember that kindness is self-serving. So, let's not get our egos get too big because we're doing a lot of really cool stuff and doing this. I'm kind to people because I feel good when I'm kind to people. So it really is all about me. So
there it is again. So, all right. So, but looking back and looking forward, and the lessons that you've learned along your life, you're the wise sage goose on the pond, Trevor. What is the future for you, and what does the future of Surepoint look like?
So for Surepoint, I think it's easier for me to answer, to be honest with you. Like, we did something really cool, and we wanted to build a company that could be around for 100+ years. And so we rolled out a broad-based employee ownership program here, and we rolled it out in December of last year. We were going to pre-pandemic, and then when the pandemic hit, we didn't know if we were going to survive it or not for real. So we wanted to make sure we didn't tie up more people's money. We already had too many people's in houses in this thing already. But we rolled that out, and I think we're over 100 or close to 100 people now. And we set it up in a way that anybody who wanted to be an owner in Surepoint could be an owner in Surepoint. So it was wealth redistribution. It's about giving people opportunities, and kind of different, definitely in our space. And we set it up so that if it's going to be broad-based, and you set the limit of the minimum investment too high, even $5,000 is so much money to some people. Like, it's life-changing. Said, let's set the minimum buy it at $100 a month, because it's not just about money. I mean, it is. Somebody puts $1,200 a year into this thing. In 20 years, 25 years, if they had an opportunity to grow in our company and go from an administrator to a CFO or CEO, or a first-year apprentice to a project manager to my position, but they can also generate some wealth. But it's also about having a feeling of being an owner. Some people never get that feeling, and I was like, so it's an emotional thing. It's hopefully a financial investment that really helps. And so we set it up so that it will payroll deduct $100 a month. And I said, for $100 a month, it's 5 Starbucks coffees for someone. Like, you can sacrifice if you want to. We got really, really good participation. And we just have this, we have this feeling in Surepoint now, and this group of folks that are just so committed, and they're going to take it to levels that I couldn't even imagine. And as hard as it is for me to really, talk about this and be open about this, I have to move on at some point for a number of reasons. One is for the company to grow to the next level, and I don't know when that is. And I don't want to put them in a position where they have to force me out because I'm just clinging on too hard, but it'll probably be a little bit of that because I love it here. But also for people to have opportunity to grow. If we can't say we want you to come and be a part of this thing for 25 years, but you can never become a CEO because I'm not leaving until I'm 70. And so I'm really contemplating what does life look like 5 years from now for me, and what's my next thing? Because as much as I've got a lot of awareness and I've done a lot of work, I'm still a human being. I still have insecurities. I still have fears. And I still wonder that this has become a part of Surepoint has become a part of who I am. It's my identity is tied to this company. And I used to say I have an unhealthy emotional connection to it. And I'd be joking. Now I say it seriously. Like I do in some ways. But I'm excited about the future. I believe that at the right time, something will come up. I'll meet that guy in the bathroom and he'll be like, honey, I'm building a spaceship and flying to Mars. I don't know.
Well, I would say, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans.
Yeah, exactly. That's hilarious.
So I have one last question for you here, Trevor, that you do not have. And here's the question. If Trevor Muir, if you were standing on the top of a mountain, you can use Kilimanjaro, and the whole world was intently listening to you, what would you say?
Be brave enough to be you.
Be brave enough to be you.
Yeah,
that's courage and wise. See, you are the wise sage goose on the pond.
I was like, oh man, how do I keep this short? I like to ramble. Like this is
that's pretty good. That's powerful right there. All right, we just grabbed that. Trevor, I really want to thank you for your time today. I know you're a very busy guy and you're a man on the go. I want to thank you for everything that you do to better the pond, and you're doing it through yourself personally, through your own personal relationships. You're obviously doing it through Surepoint, and leading that culture where all of a sudden now you're creating ripples out for many other people to join the masses into bettering the pond. I want to thank you for your stories and have the courage to be able to be, open and honest and vulnerable. I think that is very admirable.
Well, thank you as well. And as I said, I love chatting with you before, and certainly want to keep you in my life. And I was so honored that you even thought of me to be a part of this. And I'm touched, and thank you for that.
Oh, how could we not? Look at the impact you're creating. So if anybody wants to find you, Trevor, where do they go about finding out about Surepoint and Someday to Today and you personally?
So I'm on LinkedIn, just under Trevor Muir. Surepoint.ca takes you to our webpage, and we have all of this stuff. We have We Care, we have Someday Today, we have a lot of the different things. And that's where if we're kicking off any kind of new initiative or we're trying to make a difference, we usually have something there. If you Google me, I think, some of the podcasts and stuff that I've done and different things, be some stuff around that. But if you go to our webpage at surepoint.ca, you're going to get a lot of stuff. And if you start to follow Surepoint, I'm one person in this, and we have some people on our team that are, they're very, very, very active on social media, very active in the community. And they, like, our people are just doing things that are so amazing. And the one thing I want to end with for me is I get to be a part of this. Like, this is not me, this is us. And I'm honored, and I say this wholeheartedly and sincerely. I am so honored that I get to be a part of this team and this family, and that they allow me to participate in the way that I can. And so now, if you want to find out about Surepoint, as I said, we do some stuff, but that's not the thing that excites me. It's who we are.
And so if they want to find you, if they want to connect with you in any way, so you're on LinkedIn, and are you on
Facebook? Yeah,
Facebook?
LinkedIn and Facebook. I'm kind of on Instagram, but I really don't know what I'm doing there. So I'd probably send you something silly that I didn't mean to. I'm trying to figure that one out.
But it'd be fun.
Yeah, but certainly Facebook or LinkedIn, and anybody who does connect with me on LinkedIn. If they send me a note, I will always respond back at some point. I love to meet people. It's a passion of mine. So, I really encourage people, like, send me, I'm just a human being. I will at some point respond, at least with a hello and thank you for reaching out. So please, if anybody's listening to this and wants to connect or wants more information on some of the initiatives that we have going on, and wants to know how they can participate, reach out to me.
Perfect. And so you also put your pants on one leg at a time.
I definitely do. And I tell people this: it doesn't matter what fancy title I have here at work, or, anything that may seemingly give me an opportunity or a privilege in life. When I put the key in the lock at home, I remember my place on the earth and place in the pecking order immediately. Like immediately.
You're gently reminded.
It is. I get to remember all about humility when I get home at night, and I really appreciate that. I really do. So
perfect. I love it.
Yeah.
So there you have it, folks. We had a great time here with Trevor Muir, and this is Warren Barry flocking off to take you beyond the pond to better the pond, because we're better together. Thank you so much, Trevor.
Thank you.